In the magical year of 1987, amongst a sea of sensational albums, this group released one of the greatest LPs of all time, with arguably the most charismatic frontman of the era. The group's co-founder and co-principal songwriter tells the amazing story of this multi-platinum juggernaut next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. We interview the great artists of the rock and roll era, and it's a mystery every single day as to who will show up here. So make sure that you subscribe below right now, click the bell so you never miss out on our daily content, and also don't forget to check out our exclusive content on Patreon. Helps us do more interviews, more videos, and you get more content. Now I'm excited to bring you yet another episode from our series Revelations, where featured artists go very deep into their greatest songs and albums. I'm honored to bring you another episode of Revelations starring Andrew Farriss, the legendary co-writer and co-founder of INXS. He wrote some of their biggest hits, most of their biggest hits, with lead singer Micheal Hutchence. On this episode, Andrew is going to break down the magic of INXS's number 6 album, the classic 1987 hit Kick. I mean, this album redefined music in the late 80s. It took over MTV, it crossed all genres, rock, pop, alternative, with its spectacular hit singles. It kind of played like a greatest hits album, really. Every single song hypnotizing listeners. I mean, 87 and 88 was ultra competitive, you know. Pop crusaders of George Michael, Michael Jackson, and Whitney Houston were tearing up the charts. You had Def Leppard, Guns N' Roses, and Whitesnake. From the hard rock side, of course, U2, REM, and the Smiths from the college rock side. INXS more than held their own with a record that still sounds fresh right now, today. Andrew breaks down the songs and the chemistry between he and the decadent showman, Micheal Hutchence. In this in-depth discussion, you're really going to like it. As we go into this interview, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, my favorite frames ever. Go design your own pair at zenni.com. I've done my own. I've got Professor of Rock on the side here. You can add great features, like I've told you before, that are available, like Zenni Blocks, that protects your eyes from digital blue light, that we all experience. Zenni rocks. You got to go to zenni.com and check it out. Here's Andrew with the story. 1987, I mean, what could ever prepare you for Kick? The album sold 7 million copies just in America. It sold over 20 million worldwide. Number 1 in Canada, number 3 here, number 9 in the UK, number 1 in Australia. Pretty much top 5 everywhere. Chris Thomas again. And David Nicholas was an important part of that as well as an engineer. When I got this album and I listened to it, and I mean, I listened to every track, and it was one of the first albums I bought with my own money. And when you got an album, you listen to that album over and over and you'd hear every song. But I wanted to get every detail about this album as a kid. And I remember reading that you wanted it to sound like the future.
Yeah, I guess that sounds, well, it sounds like a strange thing to say, but we did. We talked a bit about where we thought the stylization of everything was heading, and technology, and we were right, was a serious driver, it because not too long after we recorded Kick, it went smack bang into DJ culture and remixes and, the dance movement. Which is still going, raves and all the rest of it, and the massive explosion, which is fantastic, of rap music and all that came along with it. Michael and I talked about it. I said, we think that's going to be the future. This is what's going to happen. And so we tried to think about with Kick is how can we make it so some of these songs are still going to be relevant down the track, And we did. We worked on that a bit together. The irony of it was Never Tear Us Apart. Which has to be the most covered song I know of ours, and so many people have done it. I don't even know anymore how many people have done it. But probably my favorite cover of Never Tear Us Apart is actually Joe Cocker's that he did. I always loved that. That was pretty cool. But I was going to say, I think Never Tear Us Apart was the one song I remember saying to Chris Thomas, are we going to put that song on Kick? He's like, yeah, it's going to go on the album. You know, I really want it. And we're like, I remember thinking, why would you put Never Tear Us Apart on Kick? It doesn't suit the rest of the record. And actually, it kind of, now it seems to make sense, right? But back then, it didn't sound like the rest of Kick. It was like an old, you know, even Chris Thomas said when he first heard the song, he wasn't sure about it either, because I originally wrote that dun 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 thing on the piano. You were there. And he said it sounds like an old 1950s or Stonesy blues thing. And I said, yeah, kind of is like that, you know. Earth angel, Earth angel. Wow. And then Chris suggested me to play the string samples on it instead, which is what I did. You know, I played it as a string orchestral part on the keyboard. And that was a very clever idea of Chris to do that. And then he fell in love with it. We all did. Well, that's it.
The label, a lot of people don't know this. They fought you on this. Tell me the story about that, because they offered $1 million. If this is true, I've read different accounts, but straight from the source. Tell me about that.
First of all, back in 1987, well, $5 is a lot of money if you don't have it. But $1 million back then was a lot of money, you know. Yeah. And, you know, and what it was the label was really nervous because we've talked a bit about during this interview, you know, how, you know, radio's become like a loaf of bread. It's all sliced up and everything's divided into country or rock or adult contemporary or rap, whatever it is, you know, classical, and everything's separated, you know. I think the record label was very nervous about us because we wouldn't behave ourselves and be, you know, good little boys. And fit into this genre and that genre of music, you know, that we kept jumping camps and, yeah, we've done that. Let's try this. You know, we're always trying different things, you know. And we made them nervous. I think that's what it was all about. I think they were trying to help us. I look at it two ways. You could either say they were trying to control us, sure, yes. But were they also trying to help us? I think in a weird way they were. I think they were trying to help us to get on radio more and more by saying, look, don't play that kind of music on your album. Play this kind, and we can stick it on the radio for you, you know. I think that's part of the thinking was that as well. But it's just not what we wanted to do. It was an art for art's sake thing. We went, no, we don't want to do that. I need you tonight. We want to stick to what we believe in, you know, and we want to go down this road. Are you ready for a new sensation? I think Chris Murphy, the band's manager, had done a very smart thing, and I think he'd been told not to take certain things to radio, but he did. So slide away and give me a moment. He did anyway. He took it to radio. You know, he just went, no, I'm going to take this. And he was right. You know, like it exploded, that album, because I don't think it was like anybody else's record that I've ever known about. It wasn't like anybody's record.
That's what blew me away, is that I remember as a kid, and it wasn't just me, it was in my family. My older sister loved it. I loved it. My younger brother loved it. It was cross-generational. No matter what age you were, he had this plan. That's what was great about it. You said Chris Murphy, and you guys started playing different places. We
realized, you know, pretty early on the piece that it was the international part of our career was one of our greatest strengths. Because when one market dumped you or decided you weren't fashionable, they didn't like you anymore, We went, okay, we'll go to France, we'll go to London, we'll go to, back to Australia, we'll go to New Zealand, we'll go to Asia, we'll go whatever, and that, or US, we'll go, Canada or whatever, South America. We were one of the first acts to ever break open the borders again for the music industry down in South America. A lot of people don't know that. It was really INXS and Sting, and we were one of the early pioneers in the early 80s of going down to South America. We were the first band to play the Armadillo Stadium in Mexico City since The Doors. In 1970, we were the first band, INXS. And when we spoke to the president's son, who came along that night, and they all went apeshit because we wore sombreros on stage. But anyway, back to Kick, and that's another thing I'm thankful for. We were talking about the success of the album. It blew us away. I got to tell you, it was just, I can't believe this is happening. It kept, we had consecutive, 4 or 5 top 5 hits off that record. It was nuts.
Well, something I've always wondered about is Devil Inside. Something that people don't know is that song did not test well when it was just the chorus, Devil Inside, Devil Inside. But when they tested it with your guitar line, the dan, 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 it tested off the charts. So I wanted to ask you about that, how you came up with that and about that story, because I think that that's so important with the song that I really feel like that's INXS. Micheal Hutchence, of course, everybody talks about the charismatic, the wonderful, amazing frontman, but those guitar lines, those profound guitar lines with his voice. And I think that a key to INXS, at least in my opinion, is those profound guitar lines that go with those great vocals.
Well, right. With Devil Inside, I think I remember working on the music to that in London. I remember also that, later on in my life, during my career with INXS too, I lived in England for almost 5 years. And I used to go to Wembley Stadium where we'd played, and Wembley Arena. And I used to watch the biggest acts in the world come along, the biggest artists. And the main reason I went along was, I might be a fan of the artist, whoever it was, whether Tina Turner, Michael Jackson, the Rolling Stones, whoever it was. I'd go along and I'd watch them. And because I'm in the same industry as them, I'd try to work out what it is that the audience could get excited about with their show in tempos and grooves and whatever. With that particular song, with Devil Inside, it's almost a little bit Rolling Stonesy, where, when I remember some of the way that excitement when you'd have Jagger running across the stage, but the music's like pumping and just full on and sexy and cool, Some of that stuff, I'll take some of that attitude that they have and I'll stick it into the music, that we're making, so that when we walk on stage later on, it's exactly what you said, it just all comes alive. That was actually written with that purpose in mind.
Micheal Hutchence also was talking about how he's kind of in a God and devil phase at that moment when he wrote the lyrics.
Yeah.
Good versus evil, all that kind of thing.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because, I have my own belief system. My dad used to say for many years, everyone has the inalienable right to go to hell in any way they choose. Your choice, but I take the philosophical view that, I think Michael was struggling with some stuff later in his life and trying to find a place for himself of calm within himself, Yeah. But, I know I used to listen to some of the lyrics that he was doing, or I'd read them, and I would say to him, and it wasn't because, and I would phrase it like this. I wouldn't say, I don't understand the lyric, I don't agree with it. The way I often would say to him is that what you really want to say? And he knew what I meant. It's like, you put that out there, you're going to live with it, It's
true.
That's interesting. I'll just say, from a selfish point of view, as a co-songwriter, I would not necessarily, that's not a lyric, Devil Inside, that I would write. Because I don't know about that, right? I don't know that everyone has the devil inside. Maybe some do, maybe some don't. But I respect the fact that that was Michael's take on that. And as a writer, I respect that. But I'll also say that, yeah, you know, as my kids were growing up, I thought about it a lot. And that song, for example, is that what I really believe in? I don't know about that. And then now my kids are adults, they understand, especially some of them write the music themselves or lyrics or whatever. They get it now that they're older. You have to make a personal choice with that stuff, you know.
Well, and the music video too is a little sinister there.
Yeah, well, that's true too, you know. But I think that's where I think a lot of the time Michael would listen to my music beds and ideas, and he would deliberately choose his own lyric idea that he had, or he'd write it because the mood of the music he would go, wham, now I know what that lyric's got to be, because I'd given him that momentum.
You had to know some of these songs were definitely hits, like Need You Tonight. I need you tonight. That had to be a no-brainer for you. You had to know that was a hit. In the US, it hit #1. It was #2 in Canada, Ireland, the UK, #3 in Australia and New Zealand.
For such a massive hit, I hate to tell you this, it was so easy to write. There was no, you know, sweating and that we'd done on previous writes, and afterwards we sweated a lot too. But that song was ridiculous. I was going to write with Michael, who was living in Hong Kong at that point. I was living in Sydney, and I had a little 8-track back then, analog tape recorder, and I had a drum machine. I was working on the riffs and stuff. And then I looked at my watch and realized that I was running out of time. I had to go to get a cab. Well, the cab turns up, and I'm panicking, realizing I'm in the middle of something I think is very important. And I'm tracking this thing like a mother. I'm going ding ding ding, and I'm programming stuff and playing or whatever. Cab driver I keep running out, going, just wait a minute. And he almost drove off. And then I just grabbed, I think, a cassette of it in the end. I just did a real quick, really rough mix of what I had. Turned up with it in Hong Kong, and I get there, and Mike was sitting there, and there's a very talented engineer in there as well. And he had a Fairlight keyboard, which is a very cool keyboard. And I was like, wow, because I'd never even used one before. And I played the demo I had of Need You Tonight, which is basically what the recording is kind of like. And Michael goes, that's great. And he grabs it and he goes, give me 5 minutes. And he wrote lyrics straight out. Like, I saw him write it out, right? I'm like, wow, you know. And then he walks in the vocal booth and just sings it, just like that. That's the first vocal that he did, is what you're hearing. And then we added the keyboard parts, myself and the engineer, you know, helped me with like the sounds of that. And I love the keys on that, you know, the sound that the guy helped me get. It was fantastic. And then that's virtually what went on the record, was that recording that we did. Yeah, Chris heard it, Chris Thomas, and went, what's that? And we said, oh, that's what we've been tracking in Hong Kong. He goes, I want the tape. So we got the 2-inch tape, and we added that to Kick. It's part of the recording of it, was what we did in Hong Kong, Michael and I. And yeah, I'm pretty proud of that. You know, it was sort of just, I couldn't make up a stranger story, I don't think. It was how that came together. It was bizarre.
You want my kind. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about INXS and this amazing album. Micheal Hutchence, Andrew Farriss, what are your thoughts and memories of this album and this great time in music? Make sure that you subscribe to join our great music community here. It's great because of you. Get more content. You can click on our Patreon link below. Help us keep the music alive. It is so important, especially now. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.